Shabbat Shalom. Chocolate chip cookies. Stephen Schwartz. Freshly baked, the subtle flavor of brown sugar, sweetness with an extra flavor, excellent chocolate chips. I'm going to say semi-sweet, but definitely not milk. Ethically sourced. And the most important ingredient, really, really good vanilla extract. A multi-sensory experience. Smell them as they're coming out of the oven. The feel in your mouth. The sight of them while still quite moist. And the taste. Oh, the taste. This is Shabbat Nachamu, the Shabbat of comfort. Judging from some of the laughs in the room, I got a sense that there may be multiple people in the room for whom a really good, freshly baked chocolate chip cookie might provide a multi-sensory, comforting experience. Stephen Schwartz. Prepare ye the way of the Lord. Prepare ye the way of the Lord. Now, it's kind of unique in a synagogue to sing from a musical that is drawn primarily from the Gospel of Matthew. But the author of the Gospel of Matthew draws from this week's Haftarah, the Haftarah for which Shabbat Nachamu is named. Panu derech Adonai. Prepare the way of the Eternal. Prepare the way of Hashem. Open up the way of God. It strikes me that if chocolate chip cookies are primarily a comforting experience of four senses, that perhaps the, shall we say, exclamation, to prepare ye the way of the Lord, is tying right into the fifth sense, the sense of hearing. We're hearing about possibility. We're hearing about a path. We've spent 3 weeks moving from questions to darkness, symbolically, to this national day of mourning on Tisha B'Av. And in this Haftarah that begins, Nachamu, Nachamu, Ami, comfort, comfort my people, Isaiah, the same prophet who presented his vision of destruction that we read last week as the Haftarah, changes his tune. Comfort, comfort my people. And pretty soon after that, we hear those words, Panu derech Adonai. Make way for the path of the eternal. Prepare ye the way of the Lord. It's a compelling idea, I think. What does it mean to open up a path to God? Particularly when it feels like maybe we've been isolated, when we've talked about moving into exile as a people during these weeks of this summer season. So what does it look like to make our way back? I've been thinking that some of the answer, conveniently, is in this week's Torah portion, in Va'et Hanan. Not only do we have Moshe describing in the very title the entreating that he does of God. Maybe, just maybe, I could go into the promised land, even though you kind of told me I can't. And Moshe's speeches, now a few chapters in the book of Deuteronomy, come to this chorus a few times that says either something like, Yisrael Shema, or Shema Yisrael. Right? More than once in this Torah portion, we have this expression, Shema Yisrael. Listen up, Israel. Listen up, Israelites. Our ancestors had to listen up to something. So in one part of Moshe's speech, the Shema Yisrael is very specifically about laws and ordinances. There is something you have to pay attention to, something legal, something maybe about your mind that you need to listen to. But I would say that let's roll back on the butt. And I would say that the other Shema Yisrael, the one that has come down to us as the more popular one, morning and evening every day, is Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha. Listen up, Israel, right? Not only is God one, not only is Adonai, this one, our God, God unique, and ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha. You shall love the eternal, your God. Sometimes this seems like such an obvious passage because it may be one of the first things we learn, whether we're growing up as Jews or new to Judaism. Sometimes when we parse it, it feels challenging. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, love the eternal, your God. Wait, are you telling me how to feel? That's a lot of pressure. Which makes me wonder if the bridge between these passages, the passages about listen, Israel, to the laws and the statutes, and listen, Israel, to this idea about God, right? Somehow in the Deuteronomistic world of gods, there's this sense that our God is unique, but not necessarily exactly a sense that our God is the only God. I think we can have a whole conversation about, do the Deuteronomistic authors believe in monotheism the way we understand it today? Each passage says, Shema, listen. I think that might be a keystone to the process of finding comfort. This is happening on a large scale. Moshe's speeches are to 600,000 households or their descendants as they prepare to enter into the land of Israel. And yet Yisrael seems to be not only in the singular, but Shema is also in the singular. There's a sense of togetherness. There are other times where Shema is used in the plural form, but this one is about unity and connectedness. A long time ago, I remember a wonderful queer Jew in the city of New York training a bunch of other people, a lot of whom were Jewish, a lot of whom were queer, some of whom I think were both. Sarah is her name. And she was training people on how to respond when they called into a hotline for people who were struggling with coming out. This is pre-Zoom. There's just email beginning. I don't think people know quite yet what www dot is yet. And we're doing training in how to respond. What happens if someone's in crisis? What does active listening look like? And that was this question that Sarah challenged us with. And I think I've shared this. It's funny, I've been here such a short time, but I think I've already shared this before, but it's something I come back to over and over again, that when we went around the room And Sarah said to each of us, how do you show that you're listening? Well, it's challenging, right? If you nod your head, they don't see you nod your head on the phone. You could say, mm-hmm, and they might hear that. And ultimately where we got to was the most important way to show someone that you're listening is to really listen. The most important way to show someone you're listening is to really listen. Somehow the rest will follow. Our country is on the eve of the Democratic National Convention. Louis, we're going to wish you safe travels and an amazing journey there and back, and thank you for lighting the candles. And I suspect a lot of people might be coming into that experience with a certain amount of hopefulness and a certain amount of, I don't know if relief is necessarily the emotion right now. But what I'm really hoping that people come into that experience with and then take with them out into the world afterward, and I feel like I can say that because the next time I get to speak, it'll be afterward here, a week from now, is a sense of the importance of listening. Yes, there are big speeches and a certain amount of grandstanding and platforming that any party would do. And my hope, and I think this is something that we've seen across candidates, across experiences, is how people show up with one another and listen. Listen on the big scales. Listen with the person sitting next to them. Listen for who's not in the room. Who's not in the room because they're voting differently in all sorts of ways. Who's not in the room because they already feel shut out because someone didn't listen. We often talk about the Shema as Jews as like the most important prayer. Is it a prayer at all? Good question. A statement from the Torah. Listen up, Israel. Adonai is our God. Adonai is one. Perhaps it's a statement of faith. Some synagogues, people stand up and say it as if they're really proclaiming like a vow, like, in a way, in that kind of formal way. Many synagogues sit when saying the Shema, typically, as if it's something that we're studying over and over again. And whether you think of it as a creed, or whether you think of it as something to learn from over and over again, or a little bit of both, ultimately, the word Shema is how it all begins and where we all come back to. I think that this sense of comfort that the prophet wishes for us on the Shabbat is one that can begin with listening. I think that this sense of comfort that we can provide one another is one that has to begin with listening. And I think this is a place where our prayers day in and day out can teach us that even though chocolate chip cookies can provide us with a deep sense of sensory connection in all sorts of ways, that ultimately the enduring sense of comfort that each of us needs, and our friends need, and our future friends need, and our enemies need, and everyone needs, can come from listening. Thanks for listening. Shabbat shalom, everyone.